Live. This is Monday Night Live.
Oh.
Brock? Nope, can't hear you. Now you're muted. No vision.
You're wearing pants, Brian.
Yes, I am. Are you?
Well, shorts or pants, aren't they?
Yeah. I'm just surprised it's not a swimsuit or something, you know, going to dive in off the end of the dock.
I thought about it today. I lost 2 pairs of glasses already.
Jeez, that's pretty rough.
There,
For the
Stephen.
attendees on the line, we can see your names, but you don't have a video. We can't see a picture, just so you're aware. I know that there was a question. I tried to answer it. I'm not sure if it got answered.
Stephen, we supposedly have 11.
Is my mute solved, or is I still
Yeah.
muted?
No, you're
Better?
in. Yeah.
I can hear you.
Woohoo! Wow.
Hello, Marnie.
Hi, how are you?
Any better, I'd probably be you.
More.
There's your worship.
Madam Mayor.
Kim, did you see the question?
Yep, I did see the question. Is anyone supposed to be invited as a panelist? I can change that, Marnie.
No.
Okay, then no to the attendees. We don't see the attendees, only if you're a panelist and you're presenting. But the mayor, yeah, the mayor will seek any questions.
Hey, Gord.
Bonne soirée tout le monde.
New hardware store up in Sealy's Bay. Is that opening soon?
It is open now.
Is it?
Yes.
Where is that in relation to the grocery store?
Other side of the street, down by the turn to Bay Street. It's right where the old hardware store. It's the same building.
I just couldn't jig my memory on that one. Okay, good.
And the pizza place is open and the ice cream place is open. Celebrate
Celebrate.
Sealy's Bay night.
Very good.
Hey, there's the other guy from the balcony.
Yeah.
What's going on, Jameson?
The pizza is good. The pizza is excellent.
Good to hear.
Good day, Deputy Mayor. How are you doing?
Oh, any better? I couldn't stand it.
Handsome as ever.
Before the meeting and before a bunch of people start saying that I've gone to an illegal barbershop, I got a lot of comments from wife and daughters about looking like some kind of demented wizard from the 1970s with my hair the way it was, and barbershops are closed. So I found an old set of pet clippers and I gave myself a haircut, and I have pictures to prove it, which I've hesitated putting up on the web because they might scare children and things. But anyway, this is self-help here at DIY.
It's like a zero.
Just
So
right to the top.
now you look like a bald demented wizard from the 1970s.
Okay, I think I just text Councillor Fody to see if he was joining us. Okay, he is. So I'll just wait until Councillor Fody gets on.
By the way, this was very inexpensive.
No DNA leaking while it happened?
Never know. I don't think so.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Maybe what I'll do, Counselor Fode's heard my diatribe that I do in front of all meetings. So I'll call this meeting to order at 6:01.
There he is.
And we will ask for any declarations of interest or general nature thereof. If you have an interest, please declare it now. I don't see anybody's hand popping up, so I will assume there's no conflicts. And we will go forward with the purpose of the meeting, and I'll read my standard blurb between every public meeting. Personal information collected at this public hearing is collected under the authority of the Municipal Act and will be used to assist in making a decision on the matter. All names, addresses, opinions, and comments are collected and form part of the minutes which are available to the public. Questions regarding this collection should be forwarded to the Director of Planning. The purpose of public meetings is to present planning applications in a public forum. Following presentations by the applicant or staff, council members will be afforded an opportunity to ask questions for clarification or further information. The meeting will then be opened to the public for comments and, sorry, I apologize. Open for public for comments and questions. When you speak, please provide your name and address for the recording in the minutes. All comments should be directed to the chair of the meeting. The applicant will be provided the opportunity to address public questions once all members of the public have made their submissions. For the application being presented tonight, a report and recommendation are being presented to council. Okay, so we'll go forward with the agenda as it's proposed, and the first thing on the agenda is road closing and sale of unopened road allowance, concession 9 between lots 12 and 13. Madam Planner, would you like to speak to this?
Certainly. I'm just going to share my screen. So this is a meeting under the Municipal Act for the closure of a portion of a road allowance. The road allowance is located in concession 9 between lots 12 and 13. So this is the portion of the road allowance here. It's oriented north to south, and it's between 2 lots. The property that's requesting the portion be closed and conveyed is the property that's shown in the hatched tone here. The property does not have frontage on a public road. This is an unopened road allowance. They gain access from the Rose Bay Road across this property, which is owned by another family member under separate ownership, cross the road allowance to get to the area of development, which is up on this point. This request came forward because of an application for building permit for a new garage. In reviewing the application, it was very difficult to tell if the garage was located on the road allowance, the proposed garage, or on the property, because the location of the road allowance is somewhat undefined in terms of on the ground and on the property. So in terms of that, we weren't certain if the existing cottage may perhaps encroach on the road allowance or the new garage and where it would be located in proximity to the road allowance. Based on this and the review, the applicant submitted the request for the road allowance to be stopped up and conveyed. The purpose of this is just to add the road allowance to the property to allow them space for setbacks and improvement of the existing structure. In reviewing the policies of the official plan, which are set out in the staff report that is in front of council later this evening, there are policies in the official plan that speak to where council will consider road applications for road closure. One of them did include if the closure is intended to address title problems resulting from inadvertent construction on that portion of the road allowance. I would note that there's been a number of items of correspondence that have been submitted today in response to this. One in particular, the Charleston Lake Environmental Association did provide a number of questions. Just to quickly review some of those questions, I would point out that any future lot creation would be subject to the policies of the official plan, which start out in terms of saying that new lot creation will be discouraged, I believe is the exact wording. I don't have it in front of me right now, or not permitted. And it would only be permitted in certain cases subject to a number of studies. So there's no proposal for lot addition in front of council this evening or on the table at this time. And any future proposals would be subject to all of the policies of the official plan. There would be public processes involved. And finally, any septic systems would be required to be compliant with the Ministry of Environment requirements. And there were no mineral deposits or mining rights identified in the official plan as it relates to these properties. So I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Madam Planner. So if I can ask you to share your screen. There we go. Okay, now I can see everybody. I'll take questions from council members. I see Councillor Fody, and any other questions? And Deputy Mayor Lackey, and then Councillor Grell. So Councillor Fody, go ahead.
Madam Mayor, excuse me, to our planner, can we go back or make reference to the map on the bottom? Did you say that was an unauthorized or unopened road allowance?
That's correct. It's an unopened road allowance. Would you like me to share my screen to bring it back up?
You can, maybe just to clarify it for everyone's sake.
So this area here
Yes.
is the unopened road allowance.
And do you know where that connects on the very far left? Does that connect to the La Rose Bay Road? Or is that La Rose?
No, this is La Rose Bay Road right here.
That's what I thought. Okay. So I guess what I'm saying is I personally have a little hesitation of closing a road that accesses water for future use. We don't have a lot of access points in our township for water. You know, whether it's canoe, kayak, you know, a poker boat. But if we were to close that road allowance and then the other road allowance someday gets opened, we've basically just cut our own throat. But that's just my opinion on that. Thank you.
I will recognize Deputy Mayor Lackey and then Councillor Garrell.
Thank you, Your Worship, but I think Terry said everything that that I would have, so I appreciate that, Councillor Fody.
Councillor Garrell.
Thank you, through you, Your Worship. When I was reading the letters that several citizens had written to us, I became a little confused as to some ownership in neighboring properties. Not that it is germane exactly, but they were making arguments, if you will, that they owned adjacent properties. And I just be clear, I'm looking at the a map of the properties from county, and I see, let's see here, I see number 3, pardon me, lot 13, and then lot 12. It was unclear to me who owns lot 12. That would be the property to the west, because Mr. and Mrs. Ross have suggested that they own property to the west, and I wasn't sure if that was lot 12. Does anybody have an answer or thoughts on that? And the other to the east of lot 13, which is Mr. Kelso's property, as I understand it, it looks like lot 14. Is that privately owned at this time? Lot 15 sounds to me like it was given to Parks. And where I'm going with all this is how close is all of this to the Parks property? And again, the Rosses have indicated that their property is going to the park at some time. And I just wondered, is that lot 12? I'll leave it at that for this minute. Thank you.
Madam Planner, do you have any comments to make, or you'll have to look that stuff up?
I have to look that up.
Okay. So I think the question is specifically who owns the properties surrounding this particular property.
Sure.
And
its relevance to being part of Parks, the Charleston Park, because if the land be adjacent, either side is still privately held, then the chances of it going to the park are quite different at this point. In my mind, they are. Thank you.
Mr. Kelso is on the line. We could probably recognize him and he would be able to tell us the property owners. Madam Planner, would you be comfortable with that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So I will recognize Mr. Kelso. We will unmute you or ask you to unmute, and you can speak specifically to the questions that are asked. Thank you, Mr. Kelso. Mr. Kelso, can you turn on your microphone? Your microphone must be off on your computer. We're not hearing you on our end, unfortunately. So what I might do is just leave him on there, and we'll see if we'll go to Councillor Maybe first for some more questions, and then we'll go back to Mr. Kelso if we can sort out the microphone issue. Go ahead, Councillor Maybe.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and through you. I was wondering, it seems to be a controversy on the building itself. So is there going to be a survey one way or the other, regardless of whether this is transferred to them, just to confirm that the building is or is not on their own property? Thank you.
Madam Planner.
Well, there would be a survey required if the road allowance were to be conveyed. Ultimately, you're correct. There would need to be a survey to determine where the structures actually lie in relation to the property lines, because at this point, that was the challenge with advancing a committee of adjustment application, was that we really didn't know where the property was actually located relative to the property lines and the road allowance.
Okay. Mr. Kelso, are you there? Still no, unfortunately, we can't hear you. So Councillor Oakley or Councillor Jameson, do you have anything to add? No. Brock, you had your, sorry, Councillor Gorell, would you like to speak again? Go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through planning, when I was reading this, and what became a bit of a ball of wax for me is we are suggesting that Mr. Kelso purchase this at fair market value and so on, so he incurs a cost. Have we implied to him then that if he does so, that sort of waives anything that might be said at a committee of adjustment? It seems to disempower them we're almost granting it in advance. It seems we're getting the cart before the horse here a little bit, or it confuses me what our stance would be. If we've suggested, you buy the property, you can do as you wish. Well, I'm a little uncomfortable because I don't know what that is. I have no idea. It's a garage. The committee of adjustment would feel under pressure, it would seem to me, having sold this property to the gentleman, and then it would strike me they can't say no. Thank you very much.
Madam Planner.
Absolutely not. We have no ability or authority to alter what the committee of adjustment. They are a quasi-judicial body and make their decisions based on the information in front of them. Based on the information we had in front of us as staff, there was questions about the property, where things lie on the property, and this was recommended as a potential option to consider in terms of addressing the situation, with absolutely no guarantees regarding what council's decision would be, because ultimately council is the decision authority, and there are policies in the official plan with respect to road allowances that lead to water. So certainly this was all explained to the applicant that there are no guarantees whatsoever in the process.
Okay.
I'm going to recognize Councillor Olkey and then Councillor Fody.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you. Reading the letters, one of the big concerns is future development, specifically that with this additional land, could more lots be created in this property and more cottages on the lake? And it's pointed out by the Charleston Lake people that the lake is at capacity now. I wonder what the planner would advise us in that regard. What freedom of action would the owner of this property have should they have this road allowance contributed to the property? Thank you.
Through Your Worship, there's a site-specific policy framework in the official plan for at-capacity lake trout lakes that applies to this area. So in terms of that, there's a very specific policy framework around creating new lots. And the way it starts out is that new lots are generally not going to be supported. So it's basically starting at a no in terms of new lot creation along Charleston Lake. And then there's a list of substantial studies, including nitrate lake capacity assessment and different things along those lines, should somebody choose to pursue it. But the starting point based on the official plan policy is that new lot creation through consent or plan of subdivision is generally not going to be supported.
Councillor Jameson.
So, as I read all the letters too, so what I'm hearing, and I also read some information that the planner kindly provided me, even if we were to proceed with this application, it doesn't circumvent any other policy. It doesn't in any way connect to any other separate or distinct policy from the specifics of this application. So whether this application is passed or not, if it is passed, there are still all the other aspects, as I'm reading and understanding it, that are going to be required before anyone can really do anything else to that property. Am I getting the gist right on that?
Madam Planner.
That's correct. Sorry, I'm just trying to open the policy framework right now. So for council's information, what the official plan policy states under the policy section for highly sensitive lake trout lakes is that to protect the lake trout habitat in Charleston Lake and Red Horse Lake, the following policy approaches are supported, which indicates that there was a comprehensive assessment done. Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry and the Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks have undertaken many studies. There's a lot of details in that. It says generally the creation of new lots through consent or by plan of subdivision or condominium will not be permitted within 300 meters of a lake trout that is classified as at capacity, except under strict conditions, which would include separating existing dwellings, where all new septic tile fields would be located such that they would drain to a drainage basin which is not at capacity, where all new septic tile fields are set back at least 300 meters from the shoreline, where drainage from the septic fields would flow at least 300 meters to the lake, but that must be supported by a qualified report prepared by a professional, and where site-specific soils investigation prepared by a qualified professional demonstrates that phosphorus can be retained, subject to the satisfaction of the Ministry of Natural Resources and the Ministry of Environment, and that new development may proceed within 300 meters only on existing lots of record, and the township may require the preparation of a lake capacity assessment in accordance with the requirements of the Ministry of Environment and Ministry of Natural Resources. So there's a lot of requirements around potential new lot development. And as I said, basically you're starting at a generally not permitted.
Okay, sorry. Sorry, you follow up, Councillor Jameson, then back to Councillor Fody.
Just to say, is presumably the applicant is clear that this is as complex as it might be going down the road. So, I mean, the issues being raised by residents are valid, and of course they are, but also the applicant, I'm just commenting, I presume the applicant is aware that this is a very complex situation.
So, Councillor Fody, before you go ahead, I'm going to read the comments. Mr. Kelso has typed some comments in to us as through the question and answer. And they say the unopened road allowance cuts through a large swamp and is designated EP, environmentally protected, I'm assuming. My point is that the road allowance would never be opened. We also have no desire to apply for a severance, and there is private land abutting our parcel of land on all three sides. And the other side would be the lake, I believe. So you're talking about private land on all three sides of the portion, as well as the lake on the fourth side. So I hope that answers some questions that he's already posed. Go ahead, Councillor Fody.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, the clarification that the unopened road allowance goes through a swampy area, as he refers to, then yes, that would answer a few questions. My question goes to the Director of Planning. You had said that there was a number of correspondence. Is some of that, is most of this against this proposal, or can I ask?
Through your worship, yes, it's all supporting. There's, I believe there's 3 pieces of correspondence that I have in front of me. One from Friends of Charleston Lake, which is supporting the, it is supporting the Charleston Lake Environmental Association letter. They are both asking for additional information, most of which was discussed this evening in this meeting, but I'm sure that we'll hear from them once it's open to the public, because I see that there are a number of participants on the line. And so, yes, most of them are either opposed to or asking for additional information and clarification.
Okay, thank you. Follow up if I may.
Go ahead. And
So,
then
so
go ahead.
the only reason Mr. Kelso can clarify this for me, the only reason there's a request to close this load allowance is so that the buildings can be put on the property referred to right now as the road allowance. Is that right? Can they not be moved one way or the other? Because apparently you already have access to their property. So access to the property isn't the question, right?
Through your worship, if I can just share my screen again. Access to the property is a bit of a question. Let me just share this. So this is approximate. Here's the road allowance, and this is the approximate location of the road allowance. Again, this is not a survey, so we don't know the exact location of the property lines and the structures relative to the property lines. They're proposing to put a garage on the property, which it appears based on our review that the garage would encroach into the road allowance. But again, staff don't have exact distances or measurements based on surveyed data to understand the exact location of the structures relative to it, other than the approximate location based on what we're seeing here and on air photos.
And park on, sorry, he's saying that there's park on one side, correct? Sorry, this is difficult when we're looking at comments. There is an existing building is in place. The previous owner owned both parcels. I'm just reading Mr. Kelso's comments at this point. Previous owner owned both parcels. There's an existing building in place.
Yeah.
Madam Planner, when he speaks about existing building in place, is there an existing garage in place, or is he speaking about the dwelling?
There's a cottage. There's a cottage on the property, and they're hoping to construct a garage. Okay.
And so his point earlier would change the, there's parkland on one side of this property, not privately owned on all 3 properties. This is what makes it difficult. So, sorry, I saw Deputy Mayor Lackey's hand up. I'll recognize him, and then I'll go to the comments, because there are a number of questions and I want to get to these individuals before we have to end this meeting. Go ahead.
Sorry, Your Worship, I was just reading them as well. Typically, we don't cut off an artery that goes to waterfront, going back to Councillor Fode's comments. Is, as far as recreational value, did that come into play?
Madam Planner?
I'm not certain what you're asking, if you could explain.
I mean, people like to hike. They, I know I've been down that area in the wintertime, snowmobiling, to go from lake to lake, and
Oh, okay.
you know, and if there's any you know, people that want to hike down there, did we take that into consideration?
Through you, is Madam Mayor, certainly it was a consideration, but again, given that there may have been construction inadvertently directly in proximity to the road allowance and other things, and that there are many other road allowances and access points in the area, based on the policies of the OP, we put forward the recommendation that we put forward based on the application that was submitted. So there's many other road allowances. If it's a swampy area and it's a protected area, I don't think that we necessarily want snowmobiles and other types of equipment going down there. So that was one of the considerations.
And just to underscore one of the comments that was already made is that this unopened road allowance goes to another unopened road allowance, correct? It's not actually going off of an open road allowance currently.
That's correct.
So if we were as a municipality to ever make that an access to waterfront, it would require considerable construction on our part to build a road through a potential environmentally protected swampy area.
That's correct.
Okay. So this is not an existing path to the lake. You can't access the road allowance unless you are airdropped in. Well, you would be able to come off the other unopened road allowance, I would think, if it's township owned. So I don't know if that's entirely true, but Councillor, maybe I'll recognize you, and then I'm going to the people that are on the line that also want to ask some questions.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you, as I was looking at the topographical map, that road allowance has about 100-foot height difference. So putting a road through there would be a little bit difficult through our granite ridge that we have. So I'm not sure how we would get around that little situation if a road allowance was actually put through that area. Thank you.
Okay, so I will go to the attendees, and those who would like to ask a question, I will recognize you. So I have John Ross, I believe. Sorry. Yeah, your virtual hands up. So I've got virtual hands up for John Ross, Pierre Menard, and Michael McAdoo. So I'll recognize John Ross, please.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Go ahead.
Good. The first thing is, and thank you. First thing I'd like to speak to the questions earlier about that Councillor Grell put forward. And I want to make sure that there's no confusion because there are many Rosses in and around this parcel. So the letter that I think you were referring to is from Don Ross, of Don and Marnie Ross, who are the active in the Thousand Island Watershed Land Trust.
Yeah.
And they are no relation to the Ross family that owns the property directly north and also west of this property, the western portion being the portion that is north of LaRose Bay. But I want to be very clear that although the property is the Ross family property is held by a nonprofit corporation, that nonprofit corporation within its bylaws is not allowed to sell the property. The only disposition of that property at the time when the Ross family ceases to use it is to gift it to the provincial park. That bylaw is protected by a special membership within the nonprofit corporation. That membership is a judge of the Superior Court. There is a letter that is reserved and in safekeeping that is a direction to the judge of the Superior Court that they serve only one role, and that is to decline any change in a bylaw that changes the disposition of the property. So you can effectively think of the Ross property, which is also covered by substantial environmental easements that protect the 600-foot riparian zone, that you can be assured that that park is, although it's in private hand, those parcels, although they are currently in private hands, the final disposition will only be to the park. So in effect, the lands to the north and west of this property on the north side of LaRose Bay is effectively a park property and goes from LaRose Bay all the way up to the portage, which connects the LaRose Bay up to the park property at the portage, and then subsequently to the large piece of property that was purchased and given to the park known as the Sheffield property.
Okay.
The second comment that I want to make is that I am not clear why the statement was made that this road allowance is swamp. The road allowance comes in onto the point from the lakeshore going south on this property, there is a steady rise going up to the geological dome that forms on the property between Concession 9 and Concession 8. And although there might be, a wetland pool in the background, this is high country, as Councillor Mabby mentioned, from a topographic perspective. So I'm not sure what the comment is referring to regarding the swamp.
Okay, we'll ask for clarification.
Thank you.
Mr. Kelso, have you figured out your microphone problem? If not, we'll go to the comments or the questions to see if he's, there is no way a defined access or an existing access. I believe that we understand that, Mr. Kelso, but because it's the township's unopened road allowance, we have the ability in the future, should we wish to put something in there. Is that correct, Madam Planner? Because it's our land at that particular time, that unopened road allowance?
That's correct. And Mr. Kelso also just confirmed that this road allowance is high ground.
Okay, so he's corrected that. I apologize, Mr. Kelso. It's very difficult when we're not able to hear you speak, but thank you for doing your best in light of the technological challenges. Mr. Ross, do you have any other comments or questions before I move on to the next speaker?
No, I don't think so at this time, but I reserve to raise my hand again. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Menard? There we go.
Yes, Your Worship. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Unfortunately, I hear about 40% of the conversations that are ongoing because I'm having some technical difficulties with the sound. So because of that, I would like to defer to Mr. Michael McAdoo. I'm the Vice President of the Charleston Lake Association. And Mr. McAdoo, who is also on the line right now, is the author of the letter, and he has actually more knowledge than myself to the situation. So I would like to defer to him because I'm not able to effectively hear back anything that's being said.
Thank you, Mr. Menard. Before we go to Mr. McAdoo, Mr. Kelso has clarified that the east-west road allowance, so that would be at the bottom of the road allowance we're looking to close in this particular report, is through the wetland. So it's not the high ground that's going through Mr. Kelso's property, but if you were looking at that rudimentary drawing, it's at the very bottom. That's the east-west. So we'll go to Mr. McAdoo, please.
Yes, good evening. Do you hear me well?
We do. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Michael McAdoo with the Charleston Lake Environmental Association. So thank you for this. I think our letter stated that, we're not against development per se, but we want to make sure that development does respect all the applicable rules and that we don't lose optionality for the future. And I think if I listen to the conversation, we have a lot more information than we had before. And I think a lot of the questions asked by the different council members are questions that we had. But what I gather is the problem we're trying to solve is that a new garage encroaches on this road allowance. And I'm wondering if, the complete sale in perpetuity of that road allowance is actually the best solution to that problem. Perhaps there's another solution that could solve that problem in other ways. And I think that what Mr. Ross indicated earlier, Mr. John Ross, is that notion of creating more connectivity and more public access between this part of the lake on the western side of Donaldson's Bay and down into LaRose Bay with the balance of the park, which has got to be a big strategic interest for the whole region to make that more accessible to the public. And I would encourage council to look at maybe some alternative solutions to this because I do think that once you give that road allowance up, you can never get it back. And I think that would be sad if we're foregoing something that we would, never be able to use. And we can't foresee what future councils would want to do or even future landholders in the area. But this is an option value for the council and the broader community, which I think should be taken more seriously than any individual landowner's rights in these situations. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McAdoo. Madam Planner, I see that you're writing comments furiously. So is there any other comments to be made by any other attendees? We have a hand up in an attendee. It must be at the bottom. Oh, Marnie and Don Ross. I'm not sure if it's Marnie or Don.
It's Don speaking.
Go ahead, Mr. Ross.
Thank you very much. And I would just like to support Michael McAdoo's last statement that I think what we spoke to in our letter and with questions and so forth was about the future for the benefit of the community and the environment of the region is to try and find a way to ensure some connectivity between the current park boundaries to the east and to the Ross property to the west. The Thousand Ounce Watershed Land Trust purchased Lot 15 back in 2005, and it was incorporated into Charleston Lake Provincial Park in 2014 as one of those steps towards connectivity between those properties. And this would help create one of the largest provincial parks in the province and open up the potential for tremendous hiking opportunities, as well as preservation of wildlife and preservation of lake quality. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ross. We are running out of time. We're running late. So this is supposed to be deferred to council for further discussion, unless there's more comments to be made by attendees. I'm going to, Councillor Garral, I think I'm going to wait until we have our discussion at the council table, because we're going to have further hashing out of this or deferral.
Can I ask a quick question of Mr. John Ross?
Sure, I'll allow it.
Mr. Ross, if you can hear me, again, I'm looking at the county lot divisions here, and I see you've described in general terms the Ross family's holdings. Is that lot 12 of concession 9 running up the shoreline more or less, and the north of La Rose Bay? This easement, we're not the one that we're talking about transferring, but this that easement sort of splits the property. It's unclear to me if what you were referring to as being part of future grants and so on, that would have a great bearing on my decision in this. I don't know if you can answer that now, but we're going to have a council meeting here, or a committee of the whole meeting, and this will be coming up again. Thank you very much. Sorry to take up the time.
Not a problem. So the answer to that question is that the small section of lot 12, which lies south of the La Rose Bay Road, is the former Lindsay, now Kelso property. And pretty much everything due north of that, so the remainder of lot 12 is the Donald Ross legacy property, and has the easements on it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you.
Okay, Michael McAdoo, I'll let you have the last word, and then we'll move on to our next planning item on the agenda.
Thank you, Your Worship. This isn't directly related to this application, but if anybody happened to be in La Rose Bay in their boat yesterday afternoon, they would see that there's a heavy excavator sitting there right in the right close to the shore, right in that wet area there. And I would just hope that any activity involving heavy excavators in that region would be complying with the Fisheries Act, the Ontario Water Resources Act, and other applicable regulations. And I'm sure Mr. Kelso would want to make sure that all those rules are being respected, because we know he loves the lake very much. Thank you.
I'll also hear from Mr. Roy Angelo. I'll let that comment stand, as he has not spoke yet. Go ahead, Mr. Angelo. If you could unmute yourself, Mr. Angelo. There we go.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, just I had submitted an email with a couple of questions, and I appreciate that some answers were very much forthcoming today. Much appreciated. But the one question regarding what sort of technical review or planner reviews have actually been undertaken, I believe it was not answered. Is that something that will be perhaps forthcoming before we get to council?
Madam Planner, did you want to speak to the process that this went through to make it to here?
Certainly. We've received the application. We've looked at the official plan and the zoning policy around it. The report in front of council recommends that a survey be undertaken should council be supportive of this, and that land appraisals and all costs would be those costs by the applicant. In terms of detailed supporting studies, I'm not sure what you would be looking for or considering at this point. So perhaps a little bit more clarification would be helpful.
Mr. Angelo?
Okay. Am I still unmuted?
No,
Yeah.
you're good. We can hear you.
You good? Okay, thank you. I was really interested in knowing whether the application, from the point of view of removing this road allowance from the municipal inventory, the impacts that has on planning in more detail than just very cursorily. And I was also interested in what any proposal, even use of this road allowance would be in terms of what CRCA and its implementation of its regulations, the implications of that may be. So I was really raising the question as to what, if any, technical analysis was put forward into this application, or the broader scope of the implications of this application.
So I believe what'll happen is, from this planning meeting, after the comments that we made, we'll be going to having a further fulsome discussion at council tonight, whether it'll be considered a yes or no decision, or whether we'll be asking for further information deferral. That'll be up to council's purview at that time. But we've met the planning regulation to allow people to weigh in and give us their feedback. And we really appreciate the number of individuals who've chimed in tonight, as well as Mr. Kelso during the comments. So he did make a comment saying that the excavator was actually being moved tomorrow, so and not in use at this point. So no work being done in this area. So without any further comments or questions, I'm going to go forward with the agenda, because we're already 15 minutes late for council at this point, and I'd like to get this wrapped up so that we can move on to council and we can have a further longer discussion about this. So with that, we move on to the Retail Business Holiday Act proposed changes for TLTI. Madam Planner, do you want to speak to this?
Certainly. So this matter came forward as a request from the operator of the lighthouse in Rockport. It came forward because LCBO was looking for, or had sent correspondence to operators of retail outlet LCBO stores, looking for something in correspondence from the township or from the applicable municipality, stating that they had no objections to the retail outlets being able to operate on statutory holidays. A report was brought forward to council, I think a month or two ago, with some of this information outlining what was required. So council did pass a motion authorizing a letter to be provided to the LCBO, indicating that there were no objections with the operation of these facilities on statutory holidays. However, in looking at it more broadly, based on our review, it made sense to bring forward a report to blanket exempt all of the businesses in the township on the statutory holidays. So under the Municipal Act, council has to pass closure for one day. So the recommended bylaw in front of council tonight requires all stores be closed on Christmas Day unless they're otherwise exempted under the Retail Holiday Business Act, such as a pharmacy. But otherwise, we thought it made sense to have a level playing ground across the whole township, so that any store could decide when they want to be open, and have just that fair opportunity to operate, not just going with the tourism exemption, just exempting all of the stores with the exception for Christmas Day. So notice was provided. There was no input received with respect to this from members of the public. I would point out that the Economic Development Committee was interested and inquired into this, and there was discussion at the Economic Development Committee, and they passed a motion supporting this recommendation. Aside from that, there were no members of the public that inquired.
Okay. Any inquiry or questions in regards to this from council? Seeing none, I'll go to the attendees. We have 3 left. Is there anybody who wants to put their hand up to speak to this particular agenda item? I see no hands raised. I think we have the information we need with the report. So I need a mover and a seconder to adjourn the public meeting. I have Counselor Olkey and then Counselor Grow. All those in favor, please signify. Thank you. And it's carried unanimously. And this meeting is adjourned. So please go to your next link for the next council meeting. You will see it in your email box and we'll start this all over again. Thank you.